Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. Hope everyone's doing good. It is Monday at about 10:43. It's start of another week of crazy happenings that makes up life. So yeah, hope everyone has had a pretty good weekend. I was looking to see about any new movies that are in the theater right now. Um, I went last weekend with some friends. We saw Heretic, which was pretty mixed bag, but I thought it was pretty good. I've actually recommended a couple of people um, to go see it in the theater if they get a chance. Somebody, a gentleman, had commented on. I did a review for Heretic. I think it came out on Monday. I think I put it on Monday, and a gentleman had commented on the video. And I had said, I had a lot of good things to say about that movie, but then I also had some, not so positive things with that film. But overall, I thought I um, I think that movie, like I kind of respect that movie at least because it's doing something different. It's definitely a horror film, and it does kind of something a little bit different with the genre. It's people are kind of calling it, and I think it's pretty appropriate calling it like a religious horror, kind of like a subgenre. It's like another subgenre in the horror world, but which is I think pretty accurate. But I think because again I had a lot of problems or issues with it, but I think it was pretty solid and it was interesting. But I think the thing that was cool about that movie was it was really original. At least it was doing. I don't think it was successful, but or completely successful, but I think it was really trying to do something a little bit different. And it's unlike any movie in the horror genre that I've seen in quite a long time. But this one gentleman had was commenting on the video on my review on this page, and he was saying about how he was going to stream it and he was going to look for it somewhere online and watch it that way. And it could because it's still in the theater, like it just opened probably a little less than a week ago. When I saw it last weekend, I saw it on Sunday, and it had just come out on Friday, so it's still a brand new release. And I had said, well, again, I had grievances with some aspects of this film, but and especially like the second half and some of the things, but some of the way the story kind of develops. But I said overall, it's kind of interesting. It's worth checking out. There's a lot I would say that I do want to see it again because there's a lot to digest. It's all driven by dialogue basically. So there's a lot of thick kind of exploration about organized religion and critiquing it. So there's a lot to I think to kind of unpack or to I think you could get something out of it. I know for me, I'm interested in seeing it again for that reason. But I had said, no, 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 definitely go see it. Even though I had problems with this film, I still think it's pretty solid in some ways. But I still recommend. I was like, no, and again, it's one of those movies. It definitely has a cool atmosphere. So it's like, it's pretty rich and it's kind of absorbing that way. So I was like, no, 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 go to the theater and see it because that's the way to see it. But it's that's what we're up against. That's the not to sound judgmental, but it's just how we are. As a culture now, we want it. We want it. You know, we want stuff now. I think in this day and age, with like no inconvenience whatsoever. We want that experience. You know, we want that experience. While we're home in our comfy little couch or in our comfy little chair, whatever it is. We don't want to, you know, we don't want to, you know, leave our house or we all want to be safely tucked in bed by 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. I mean, just like it's so funny because it's like the other night I had a show, I had a gig with a band that I play in, Bookhead Sweet Tooth, and it was a show where we played at Hey Sailor, which is an amazing venue, and we had just had last week actually we had our Quantum release show there, and it was great. But I played there again this past weekend, and I thought that the show was going to be done at 10, but then realized, oh wait, it's over at 9, and I'm like, holy shit! So we started at 6:30, so it was about a 3 hour set more or less, with like one fairly, with one break, 15-20 minute break in between. But I remember we stopped right at 9, and I'm like, wow, okay, 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, nothing to do, and I'm like, okay. And leading up, we had a good crowd for the most part, but leading up to about 8:30, quarter to 9, it started getting kind of quiet there, and I'm like, it's such a weird time we live in. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I went to see another friend's band play, who is a really great band, and the same exact thing happened. It was almost the same time frame as far as like what time we played and then what time they played. And I went to go see a friend's band, and they're a really great band. They've been they've kind of emerged, I think, in a local scene as like one of the best, if not the best, kind of cover band. They're a cover band, but they do really interesting covers, and they're really fun. Great dance band. But I found that the same thing happened. Like there was an audience and a vibe going for a while, and then you're looking at your watch and you're like, wait, it's like 8 o'clock, and it's like, where the fuck is everybody? 8:30. And there was, when I was there, both places, at my gig and at my friend's gig, there was like, you had your dinner. They're both of these venues are dinner. They both are restaurants, but they also really push the entertainment. And Hey Sailor is more as a more of a fully realized music venue as opposed to this other place, Ada's Kitchen. But they do a lot for the local music scene. They have a lot of music there. Um, but they're both restaurants. Ada's is more so less focused on the music, but Hey Sailor is a bona fide music venue. And there was mixed age groups. There was older, younger crowds. An older group, and then the younger crowd. You get the bar crowd, and you get the older people that come for dinner early on the earlier side. But it didn't seem to make a difference as far as keeping people there and keeping holding people's attention and wanting to, like, okay, let's have that extra drink, let's hang out. It's Saturday night, it's Friday night, it's the weekend, let's have a party, let's have a good time. There isn't that. It's like, yeah, well, I think it's about 8:30. I think I'm gonna go home and, I don't know, choke the chicken or something. It's really weird. I don't get it. It's a strange times. But anyway, so today's show is on a movie that I don't believe I've ever talked about. I was kind of going through some of the videos. I was going through some of the videos. Sometimes that happens with this channel where, and again, before I start the show, I want to thank all of the new folks that have been, who have subscribed and joined in on this fun adventure that I call Film Fanatic. There's been a lot of new people who have come on board, subscribed, and the thing that I love the most has been every day there's been a bunch of people commenting on a lot of these videos, and I try to always take the time to reply to every comment, because this is a really fun passion project for me. I really love doing this, and I'm trying to always get, trying to always improve with what it is for what it is. And so I really appreciate people doing, commenting on the videos and getting excited by films, getting excited by art, even if it's a movie that they don't like, I've had plenty of people comment that they might not be a big fan of that movie, and it's not about whether they like it or not. I don't care. It's like I want to have that discussion. But even if it's, they don't like that particular review or that movie, it shows that they got some passion, they got some blood, and they're excited about something. Whether it's you know positive review or a negative review, that's besides the point. So I want to thank all those new folks that have been chiming in. I really really appreciate that. But sometimes with I do have a lot of videos on this channel on Film Fanatic, and I do upload videos pretty often. I don't quite do it as frequently as I was. I basically upload videos here and there, and then but I generally record a video almost every day, and then I have it set up to on the side to where I'll eventually get to it, but the video itself is done, and I usually take my time posting those videos. I've been setting videos up as premieres a lot lately, and I've been trying to bring I love lots of different movies, and I've been trying to bring even more variety to this channel lately. So, but occasionally I forget if I've done a review on a particular film or not. So I will like check out my own page to see. Oh wait, did I do a show on that? And blah blah blah. But this movie is a movie that I've been wanting to talk about, and I don't believe I ever talked about this. This is actually such a fantastic movie. I believe, yeah, this is an HBO original. HBO is one of the best companies I think out there, as far as they were. HBO is I think one of the most innovative companies that exists in television and film media. I think the two biggest things that happened in film, and more so with television, is I think when HBO was the first company that started their own productions. They were way ahead of their time. They were the first network or company, film company, media company that decided to, get behind this idea of like making their own productions. And so they've done so many great shows over the years. Mr. Show, Bob Odenkirk, and David Cross. Probably for me, my favorite comedic or comedy show of all time. They launched that whole series. They was like 3 seasons, I believe. They also produced my favorite television show of all time, True Detective Season 1, which is my all-time favorite television show of all time. They also did another amazing show, which I have, and I'm gonna eventually actually make myself sit down and watch it. But it's so damn good. 6 Feet Under. 6 Feet Under was another TV show that came out many many years ago, all original. They also did another series called The Wire, which is another fantastic series. I mean, and again, another one which is one of the most iconic television shows of all time, one of the greatest television shows, The Sopranos. I mean, it's just show after show and production after production that they've been involved in throughout the years. True Detective being a more later time, at a later time period and more recent time. But they also did a lot of television shows too, and they did this one movie called The Late Shift, which is one of my all-time favorite. I really, really love this movie, and this is, I think, easily one of the best things that HBO has ever done. And and again, this is like wicked old school. It's like, what year did it come out? It came out. Yeah, it's crazy. It came out in 1996. I was in high school when this came out, and this movie is so interesting. It's basically about the late night talk show host wars that were going on between, when you had Johnny Carson. Anybody out there who knows who Johnny Carson is, but he was one of the, probably the biggest and the most popular persona on the late night TV circuit. Kind of a legendary, performer and host entertainment. It was like an entertainment. He would do interviews and he'd have comedy and they'd have music on the show. And it was one of the most iconic shows at that time. And basically, the night shift is about the struggle of all of these different companies trying to replace Johnny Carson after he retires, and basically what they did to try to force him out. During this time, they had Jay Leno, of course, who was filling in. He was a new and up and coming comedian who would fill in for Johnny Carson after he eventually got to this place of where he became at the time a very very huge comedian, and he eventually got the coveted gig to fill in for Johnny Carson. And then David Letterman, who I grew up with, who I was always a huge fan of, he was kind of set to try to eventually take over the mantle, to try to take over the keys to the kingdom for late night. But he signed a pretty bad deal. He signed a contract with NBC, but he made a bad financial decision, so it really didn't carry any weight. And this whole movie, The Night Shift, is about the whole chess match of how these companies, basically just like fucked each other over, and and the whole and what they put people through, what the executives did during this time for getting their man in that position of power, the prime time position. And it's about Jay Leno eventually getting that coveted slot as the host, and then David Letterman getting a bigger offer actually from CBS, because this was all taking place at NBC at the time. And it's fascinating. And Kathy Bates is in this film also, and she is I know she just announced that she's going to retire. One of the greatest actresses, and she plays Jay Leno's agent in this film, and she is absolutely amazing in this movie. This film is so great. The actors that play the cast is so fantastic in this movie. Treat Williams is in this film. There's so many great characters. And it's a very funny show, obviously for obvious reasons, but it's got a lot of humor to it. It's a drama, but it also you really see the industry itself. It does kind of show you what it's a big giant rat's nest. It's just kind of a cesspool. And it's just another example of people have there's no boundaries as to or to the extent that people will go to get themselves ahead. They'll crush anything in their wake. They'll screw anything over to get that to get the crown. And this is just kind of a example of how the industry is, the entertainment industry, and it doesn't seem to ever get better. It never will. It's probably worse now, but it's a real interesting look behind the scenes of how that world works. As a kid, I grew up watching these shows. I was a very little kid in middle school, even, and watching the old school David Letterman show. And once he went on to CBS, and he was suddenly in a different time slot. He went from 12:30 to 11:30. His whole thing changed. His whole presentation of how he would do his comedy changed, and he was never, he had a lot of these corporate executives kind of watching him, and he couldn't get away with a lot of those things that he would do on a late night show. And his show and his whole kind of persona really, for me personally, just kind of I just felt like he became kind of this neutered character. He was, it was suddenly the show just wasn't as funny and as creative, even though he was reaching a bigger audience, and he was doing these things to purposely reach a wider audience, and he would. So everything was kind of watered down. It wasn't. It wasn't. Everything was sanitized, and but the old shows were just amazing. They were just classic shows, and anybody watching the old Letterman shows, like some of the interviews, I mean, where he had like Crispin Glover on the old show, or like Captain Beefheart. I mean, just some of those TV shows and some of those interviews, and some of the musical guests. James Brown. I mean, some of the greatest musical performances, and I think some of the most entertaining interviews ever. Really fantastic show. But everything got sanitized later on. But this show is so great. This movie is so great because up until this point, at being a youngster watching the show, and in high school, middle school, I when I first saw this movie on HBO, I was just blown away. It suddenly made me think of, wow, like it made me think of the entertainment industry as being a much darker place than what I thought it was. Especially the inner workings of how this you know crazy machine works, and it was kind of a revelation. And it made me think of all of comedy, especially these television shows, these formats in a totally different light. And the other thing that hit me, I watched this again. I watched this movie last night. I bought this. I only have it on DVD. It would be cool to get this. Cool to get this. Get an upgrade for this. I'm sure I could find it, but this is. I've had this DVD copy for, I don't know, probably 10 years. I've had this for a really, really long time. This was actually one of the first DVDs that I bought when I years and years ago in college. Kind of when I got out of college, I started really getting into film, and I started collecting movies basically then. I started buying DVDs, and I think this was like one of the first movies I bought. I can't remember where I bought it, or exactly when, but I've had this for a wicked long time, and this is like, this is a classic movie. It would be cool to get an upgrade, but I'm pretty happy with this, and it's one of the first DVDs I ever bought. But the thing that really occurred to me, and kind of struck a pretty strong chord for me last night when I was watching this, and I've seen this movie many times. It's just realizing, coming at realization that this is like, watching a story about dinosaurs. That something, a world and a a habitat that just does not exist anymore. It's like completely extinct. It's wild watching this show, watching this movie now, and realizing this format has changed dramatically. And again, it still exists. Obviously, I mean, Stephen Colbert now took over for David Letterman, and he still has his show. You have Jimmy Fallon, and you have all these other knuckleheads that are having these talk shows, but it's all I can't stand watching any of these talk shows now because it's all the same bullshit. It's all you know they're all trying to rip off the Daily Show. I feel they're all trying to you know everything is so politicized. Like, even though I consider myself pretty progressive and liberal, I don't like that all of these shows now have this thing of where everything has got to be commentary on politics. These classic shows back in the day, they didn't do that. They were entertain. They were entertainment shows. Even though I feel aligned with what they are saying, a lot of these newer talk shows, I'm just sick of hearing it. I want to be entertained. I can get that news elsewhere. That's not what that format's for. And I feel like now, in all honesty, it's so politicized. And if anything, it has helped the other side the most. It has, in a totally weird, fucked up way, it's backfired, and it actually emboldens and strengthens the right. So, but it's they're just it's it they're just really bad. A lot of these television shows, I think they just don't have that classic magic like when you would watch the old Johnny Carson show, or even Tom Snyder, or there were some great shows back in the day. So, but this is a great time capsule, and again, looking back at a world that just does not exist anymore. But this is an awesome movie. One of the best, my favorite series, TV show of all time is, and I've talked about it many times. I still, I still recommend it to people. It comes up. It just came up the other day or a couple weeks ago with a friend who I said, "You guys see True Detective season 1? It's the greatest thing ever." And he watched it and he really loved it, and he appreciated me. He really appreciated me telling him about it. That remains my favorite television show of all time, and again, all HBO. And this is, I think, um, probably the best movie that they produced. This is such a great movie. So yeah, it's really great. I never hear this talked about anymore, but really great. 1996. It's pretty old school. If you're a Kathy Bates fan, this is like, I think, one of her best roles. It's so fabulous. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.